Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Charizard Pidgeot. This build is heavily inspired by the list that Gabriel Fernandez used to win NAIC in seniors, with just Charizard, Pidgeot, and then Munkidori for utility. Definitely different, it's updated with the addition of the new set and slightly altering metagame, but heavily inspired by his list for sure, so I want to give credit where credit is due. I think it's in a great spot right now, especially going into Worlds. It has great matchups with Gardevoir and Goldango, which is definitely the deck's biggest selling point. And I think that it is fairly consistent and just very good at what it does. Obviously, a lot of players are already familiar with Charizard, but it has been relatively off the radar for a while, and it's still pretty under the radar. So definitely can be a sort of surprise pick that you might want to pick up, or maybe something that you once played a lot of and have sort of given up on. I think that if it's ever going to make a resurgence, this is sort of the best time for it. So let's get into the list. Starting with the Pokemon, we've got 4 Charmander, 1, 2 Charmeleon, a split of the 2, and 2 Charizard-ex. Playing 4 Charmander just to maximize the odds of finding multiple on the first turn. Then playing the 1-1 Charmeleon split because the 100 HP one is significantly better into just like Adrenabrains in general, just being able to survive multiple Adrenabrains. You know, it's that 10 extra damage, just allowing us to survive one more Adrenabrain / Shadow Bullet. And of course, not having an ability means it's not going to take up Frostlass damage while it's sitting on the bench. The 90 HP Charmeleon, on the other hand, gives you a little bit of extra protection against Phantom Dive and Technical Machine Devolution, so it has a lot of value there. So they sort of serve different purposes, protect against different things, and you have to sort of know when to use which one. A lot of time against like decks with Frostlass, it's going to be better to get out the 100 HP one sooner, and then against decks with Devo TM, it would be good to evolve into the 90 HP Charmeleon sort of the turn before that you expect your opponent to try to go for a Technical Machine Devo play. Or it might be good to, if you have to evolve one mid-game, when your opponent has multiple Munkidori set up, to set up the 100 HP Charmeleon to avoid getting knocked out with multiple Adrenabrains. We're only playing 2 Charizard-ex, because usually you only need 1, and then to recycle that one to get through the game. 2 is pretty much going to be what you're going to use most of the time. And then if you prize 1, that's when you might have to rely on Super Rod a little bit more to recover it, but all in all, 2 should be enough. I think there's definitely an argument to be made to add a 3rd just for general consistency, but I haven't found a spot for that in my current list. Next, we're playing a 2-1-2 Pidgeot. I'm only playing 1 Pidgeotto, instead I'm playing a 3rd Rare Candy to have a better aggression, a more consistent setup going first. Obviously, we're still opting to go second with the list, but if we do our first go first, or we miss the TM Evo, that extra copy of Rare Candy gives a little bit more consistency in those positions. But of course, we still want to have the one of Pidgeotto for our Evo TM plays, because that is ideally the way that we are setting up most games, is with TM Evo. And then I'm playing the 50 HP Pidgeys because although there's definitely an argument to be made that the extra damage counter that can be placed from Phantom Dive on something else while knocking out the Pidgey, it can be relevant. I value Call for Family a little bit more than denying that 1 extra damage counter from going somewhere. And additionally, because we are using Evo TM to get this evolved up in most, like right away, in most cases, the HP deficit doesn't hurt as much. Next, we have 1 copy of Fezandipiti, which I won't ever explain. When we use to draw cards, when we get Pokemon knocked out, make sure that we can push to find the pieces that we need to take our knockouts and keep our momentum. Then we have 1 copy of Chi-Yu, which allows us a lot of use against Goldango in particular. Being able to easily one-shot Goldangos, we can go ahead and evolve into Charizard, put 2 energy on the Chi-Yu, 1 energy on the Charizard, and allow us to go ahead and weave a 1 prize attacker into our prize trade. If our opponent goes after the Charizard and knocks it out, we can even maintain a 1 prize board state with the Chi-Yu. That way we can retake the prize trade. Like, let's say our opponent takes 2 prize cards, and then we attack with Chi-Yu for our first knockout, so we're 4-4 now, and the opponent like bosses our Charizard and knocks that out. Now they are 2-4, and we go Chi-Yu, and we're 2-2. Well, we might have, if we don't have a Pidgeot in play, or we like Turo or Pidgeot here, now we have a single prize board, and we're at 2-2, so our opponent can only knock out the Chi-Yu, or a different one prizer, and then we take 2 prizes for our game. 1 copy of Munkidori. So this is what makes the deck super good right now, and I think that a lot of people who are trying to make Charizard, Dusknoir, Pidgeot work instead of the Munkidori build are sort of misunderstanding how Gabriel Fernandez was able to win NAIC with this deck, and that is with the Munkidori. Dusknoir just does not provide the same kind of value and protection against some of Charizard's toughest matchups, and those are mostly Dragapult and Grimmsnarl. Munkidori is invaluable for those. It keeps your Pokemon healthy from Technical Machine Devolution plays, Phantom Dive multi-prize turns, and also strong against Gardevoir for preventing them from setting up for a 2-shot using Mind Bends and Agenabrains. Very, very key to have this Munkidori to keep your Pokemon out of key ranges for TM Devo multi-knockouts and 2-shots. It also is worth noting that it does also get you significantly closer to knockouts a lot of the time. That extra 30 damage that you might be able to do into a Dragapult or a Grimmsnarl can be very, very key to taking knockouts. Next we have Cleffa. This is just a key consistency card for when we do miss the Evo TM plays. I mean, everyone's seen how strong this card can be in many decks, including Charizard, Dragapult, Grimmsnarl, especially for decks that play the Evo TM. You're still going to miss the Evo TM play sometimes, or not have a strong Evo TM play. Maybe you prize your Pidgeotto, something like that. And in those cases, the best thing that you can do is Grasping Draw and fill up your hand and try to find your Rare Candy plays for next turn. Supporter cards, we got 4 Arven to maximize our finding Rare Candies and Evo TMs and Maximum Belt, etc. Then we have 3 copies of Iono. We want to weave in loss of disruption over the course of the game, especially because usually our opponent's going to get the first prize. However, we do want to fit in some other consistency supporters throughout the game, because unlike Dragapult, Gardevoir, and Grimmsnarl, we can't... We have to take knockouts, right? We can't play most of the game using Iono from 4 to 6 cards the way that Dragapult, Grimmsnarl, and Gardevoir can do. We don't set up for those multi-prize knockout turns, at least nowhere near as consistently as any of those decks can. 2 copies of Boss's Orders, for the same reason as I was just mentioning. I mean, even Grimmsnarl and Dragapult play 2 to 4 boss usually. But yeah, with this deck, I mean, the game is only going to be, usually we only take about 4 to 5 turns, and usually we're going to be wanting to boss up Pokemon that we can get those key 2-price knockouts on, important knockouts on. Make sure we can continue to keep applying pressure even when we are not behind. 1 copy versus Research. This sort of is the slot in where some people might put a 4th Iono, but I think it's very important because we end up at low hand sizes late game, and a lot of time we make an Iono late game to like 2 cards and need multiple cards to actually take the win that turn. So in that case, when Quick Search isn't enough, we can Quick Search or Research, dump our whole hand, and just hope to find like Rare Candy, the combination of like Rare Candy Charizard if that's what we need. Or like sometimes you need like Rare Candy Super Rod and Ultra Ball. A lot of time Quick Search isn't going to do the trick, but we can go for a Research and dig as deeply as we can. 1 copy of Brock Scouting, so just kind of like a 5th Arven early game, allowing us to get more basic Pokemon down, or search out that Pidgeot or Charizard for the turn 2, getting our full setup and attacks going. Then Hilda, similarly allowing us to search for an evolution Pokemon to get our setup going, but also allowing us to find an energy, which can be key for getting our Mist Energy out at the right times onto the right Pokemon, or finding like an energy to attach to Munkidori at the right times. 1 copy of Professor Turo Scenario. This allows us to heal, of course, a heavily damaged Pokemon to prevent our opponent from taking those easy prize cards, or remove Fezandipiti-ex from play to prevent that as an easy knockout. Remove something that might be getting trapped by like Maractus play, or generally just otherwise generally stuck in the active position. It can also allow us to reuse Agenabrain with Munkidori twice in 1 turn, and it can be used to take our Cleffa off the board, so that's not a free prize with Agenabrain later. items. We got 4 Poffin and 4 Ultra Ball, just for maximum early to mid-game consistency. Wanting to find a full board of basics early on. I mean, not necessarily a full board, but finding both Charmanders, Pidgey, maybe even a second Pidgey in some situations. And then, of course, wanting the maximum Ultra Ball count to make sure that we can find our Pidgeot and Charizard set up turn 2, and then continue to chain Charizards together through the mid to late game. 3 copies of Rare Candy. So like I said, we're playing a 3rd copy of Rare Candy instead of the second Pidgeotto, just because I think that second Pidgeotto is rarely needed. And I would rather have that 3rd Rare Candy for games where we're forced to go first and need to use Rare Candy to set up a Pidgeot turn 2, or games where, or just to more often, off of like late game Ionos, find that Rare Candy Charizard piece to seal up a game. 2 copies of Counter Catcher. A lot of matchups, especially against like Raging Bolt or Goldango, let's say, they'll take 1 prize and then we'll trade 2 for 2 from there. So in those positions, I mean, they go down to 5 and then we get down to 4 and they go down to 3 and then we get down to 2. So in those positions, we are almost always going into our turn 1 prize behind. So that allows Counter Catcher to be active for the whole game. So Counter Catcher ends up being very, very strong in the deck. 2 copies of Super Rod, and no copies of Night Stretcher, just because Charizard, we play pretty thin energy counts, and when we get our Munkidori back, it's a lot more consistent to get back Munkidori and the Dark Energy, and of course we can search those pieces back out with Pidgeot right away, unlike some other decks that prefer heavier Night Stretcher counts over heavier Super Rod counts, but Super Rod is just much more important in Charizard, similarly to the way it functions in like Grimmsnarl, where we need to Rare Candy Charizard and search those Fire Energy out of the deck. Important that they go to the deck for Infernal Rain acceleration. 1 copy of Picnic Basket. This just allows us to shore up the Grimmsnarl matchup, especially very, very strong for playing around multi-knockouts and TM Devo plays. Also, of course, can be very key into Gardevoir or Dragapult. On any of these spread decks, just being able to heal 30 from everything can often put us in a checkmate position. Then 1 copy of Energy Search. So partially so that we can search out the Dark Energy for Munkidori off of an Arven, but primarily so that when we have the Arven Evo TM play in our opening hand, but we don't have an energy to use the Evo TM, we have a way to go ahead and Arven for the Energy Search Evo TM and pull off the Evo TM play turn 1. Stadiums, Tools, and Energy. We got 2 copies of Artazon just for general consistency. Definitely the best stadium in the deck. We just want to make sure that we have lots of access to our basic Pokemon turn 1, especially when we're forced to go first. We can be a little weak to that, so having lots of basic Pokemon search is great. 2 copies of TM Evo, because we're trying to use this pretty much every single game if we can. And then Maximum Belt, allowing us to hit a lot of key knockouts much easier. With Maximum Belt and Munkidori, that's like an 80 damage boost against like Dragapult and Grimmsnarl. So if they've already taken 2 prize cards, then we're doing 240 plus 80, 320. So it allows us to get those big knockouts in Dragapult and Grimmsnarl way easier. It's also key after Goldango takes its first prize, it allows us to one-shot them back. It can be good against Raging Bolt too if we like whiff the Counter Catcher on a Teal Mask, then we can Maximum Belt to get that extra 30 damage after their first prize and knock out a Raging Bolt. If they do take their first prize to the Raging Bolt DX for whatever reason. Generally speaking, Maximum Belt just has quite a few very powerful uses, and I think it's very, very key into those matchups to get those knockouts significantly easier. I think there's a lot of other aspects that can be good for consistency in the deck, but I think that this extra 50 damage is actually key to your game plan in so many matchups. There are just so many knockouts that you otherwise would just not have knockouts on multiple turns without the Maximum Belt. 5 copies of Fire Energy, playing a pretty thin count because we have 2 Super Rod, and 5 Energy is enough to set up 2 Charizard, which is usually going to be enough anyways. Even if we prize one, if we prize a couple, we may have to lead into Super Rod a little bit more, but with 5 and 2 Super Rod, that's usually going to be enough anyways. Part of the reason we even play 5 and not just 4 is that we need to find them for Evo TM. But I think that, 5 is just generally the most consistent count, so that you don't, even if you prize one, you can still set up 2 Charizards. Next we have 1 Dark Energy. That way we have an energy searchable way to set up our Munkidori. It's also a Super Rod recoverable way to set up our Munkidori. But then we do play 1 Luminous Energy to have sort of like an additional Fire Energy if we really need it, but it can also be used for the Munkidori. Then play 1 copy of Mist Energy to prevent, mostly for TM Devo plays, but also can be very key in preventing Pokemon that you don't want to get Phantom Dived, or protecting your attacking Charizard from a Mind Bend play in Gardevoir. Next, let's move on to the matchups. Starting with our favorable matchups, we have Goldango. Chi-Yu just carries super hard here. It allows us to always have that single prize option that puts so much pressure on them to take the prize lead back in our favor if we lose it. But even if we don't pull off the Chi-Yu, we're still, I would still say the matchup is very solid. They take most games, you should be able to pull off the game plan where they take 1 prize and then you go Rare Candy Charizard Maximum Belt return knockout, and then after they knock out that Charizard, they're going to have taken 3 prize cards, and so from there you'll be doing 270 damage plus, and so you build a one-shot Goldango with Charizard without the Maximum Belt. So the Maximum Belt gets you through the first Goldango, and then the rest of them you shouldn't need the Maximum Belt to take knockouts on. And from there, I mean, all you need to do is just keep setting up Charizard attacks or Chi-Yu attack. Next, we have Gardevoir. So usually you'll be the aggressor in this matchup. You'll take the first couple of prize cards, and then from there, you'll just sort of boss their Gardevoirs to take knockouts on those, and they can't really, because you take a few prize cards to lead, even if they get the Drifloon set up and attacking, that isn't necessarily enough to flip the prize trade back in their favor, because let's say, like, you take 2 prize cards, let's say you take 1 prize card and then they take 1 prize card back with Screamtail, so you're 5-5, and then you go boss Gardevoir, go down to 3, and then they return knockout with Drifloon, they go down to 3, now you knock out the Drifloon, you go down to 2, and then, because, well, in that case, you might even be able to just bring up another Gardevoir. If you let's say you don't hit it, you have to, just because of Iono, you have to knock out the Drifloon, go down to 2, then even if they set up another Drifloon right away and knock out your Charizard again, they go down to 1, you can still win by counter-catchering their Gardevoir. And obviously, not every game is going to prize map out that way, but that's just sort of one example of, even if things going really well for Gardevoir, they get the turn 2 Screamtail attack, they get the turn 3 Drifloon attack, they get the turn 4 Drifloon attack, you still are usually going to be in command of the prize trade, as long as you hit the things that you need. And with Pidgeot, it should not be super difficult to do so. Next, we have Flareon or Eeveebox. This matchup, they don't have good ways to one-shot your Charizard ever, so they can go after your Pidgeot, but then if you just don't put another Pidgeot in play, they still have to deal with your Charizard in the following turn, and especially with Maximum Belt, after the first couple knockouts, you're going to be one-shotting their Pokemon very easily. They also play a ton of low HP 2-prizers that they might start with, or just have to use to actually get set up, like Latias, Fezandipiti, Mew, Clefairy, they might just like open or trap Ghost. So even before you're doing enough to one-shot the Flareon-ex with Maximum Belt, which is only once they've taken 2 prize cards, you can one-shot anything in their deck with, as long as you have the Maximum Belt at least. But even before then, you can still take knockouts on things like Trapagos and Fezandipiti without the Maximum Belt. Or you can go ahead and like Iono them and counter-catch their Hoots. They're not great even if like things are going really well for them and not as well for you, you can still go for mid to late game Ionos in combination with targeting down Hoots. That's still going to be a very strong strategy, and they're still going to have a lot of trouble ever actually like knocking out your Charizards. They don't have like that easy time of setting up a Leafeon-ex, especially because you can so easily, if they try to set up an Eevee, you can always just like go after the Eevee that they put the energy on to evolve into Leafeon, or especially if they have set up like an Eevee-ex, that's an easy 2 prize cards as well. And even if they do knock you out with Leafeon, you should be able to return knock out the Leafeon with your own Charizard. So it's very, very favorable for you. And Zoroark, so this matchup, like, they can early game put you in a spot where you have to allow them to one-shot you, because you, like, hit into the Zoroark, and then they can just one-shot you back with the Reshiram attack. But once they've done that, they will be in Maximum Belt range at that point, and then late game, you won't, like, once they've taken 2 Charizard knockouts for prize cards, you don't even need the Maximum Belt to one-shot their Zoroarks, so, whereas they won't ever, like, you might have to 2-shot their first Zoroark, but after that, you should be able to one-shot their Zoroarks, and if you're one-shotting their Zoroarks, then they can't one-shot you, because they need you to do damage to them to utilize Reshiram. And if they're two-shotting you, well, you're one-shotting them, then Turo and even Munkidori plus Picnic Basket can put them out of knockout ranges. Even we have Grimmsnarl. So this is a matchup where we do have a lot of tools, like Turo, Munkidori, and Picnic Basket all are going to be super, super important for playing around them taking multiple knockouts with the Brain plays and them going for a TM Devo play. However, they still can do all of that stuff, right? Like, it's still not a foolproof plan. They can still two-shot your Charizards while taking extra prize cards like your bench Pokemon makes lots of Brain damage. They can try to set up 2 Frostlass so that your Pokemon taking like a ton of damage. A lot of time they'll like hit your Charizard and then put a lot of damage to pressure down your Pidgeot, and then they'll bring up your Pidgeot, knock out the Pidgeot, and then maybe like a Charmander, and then they'll, after that, that's when they'll finish off the Charizard that they already damaged earlier. They'll take out the Pidgeot first so that you don't have as many resources for actually healing damage off of your board. That being said, if you can keep the Pidgeot alive using Adrenabrains and Picnic Basket, and just generally keep your Pokemon healthy and out of Devo TM ranges, keeping a Charmeleon on board at all times to play around Devo, then you should be able to win, especially with like an early Maximum Belt play. Early game, you can go for if you can just go sort of chase down their Frostlasses and their Munkidoris when they still only have a 1 prize board. And then sort of in the mid to late game, you should be able to start reaching ranges to one-shot Grimmsnarl, especially because their Frostlass will tick on their own Grimmsnarl, right? So it'll be a little bit easier to knock out Grimmsnarl than it would, say, a Dragon Ball DX. Next, we have Raging Bolt. I would say that, like, if everything goes well for you, the whole time, that this is a solid matchup. You can just, counter catcher around their Baby Bolt for 2 prize knockouts. They take 1 prize, you go 2-2-2. However, a lot of time, not everything goes right for you, especially when they're attacking with Baby Bolt. Baby Bolt can target down your Pidgey or Pidgeottos before they evolve into Pidgeot, potentially. Or they can go for, a Prime Catcher Bellowing Thunder play on your Pidgeot-ex for a 2 prize knockout, and then knock out your Charizard, and then without the Pidgeot in play, it might be more difficult for you to set up another Charizard from that point. There are just so many things that they can do. Like, they can Prime Catcher your Slitherwing and Iono you, and then knock it, or not your Slitherwing, your Fezandipiti, and knock it out with Slitherwing on the same time that they Iono or Judge you. And then, from that position, you don't have, it is much more difficult for you to go ahead and go around their Slitherwing and take another 2 prize knockout. So, there's just so many things that they can do to try to disrupt you a little bit. And if at any point you miss knockout, they suddenly have the prize lead, and it's not going to be an easy time trying to disrupt them out of the prize lead. So you really need to be able to immediately respond to their first attack with a 2 prize knockout and keep taking 2 prize cards every turn from there. If you can't do that, then a lot of the time they are just going to have a steep advantage. Especially if they can, a lot of times they can even just set up a 1 prize board and start swinging with Baby Bolt. And from that position, there's not even, there's not a possibility for you to go 2-2 from there, right? Now, it's difficult, not easy for them to do necessarily. And you can even, try to throw in a Chi-Yu knockout on a Teal Mask to throw a single prize attacker in there. But it's easier said than done. They have a lot of tools for combating you. And like I said, if everything goes right for you, I think that it can be fine, but their deck is good at making things go wrong for you. Next, we have Straight Dragapult. You could air this maybe a little bit more on the unfavorable side, but I think it's pretty close to even with the addition, with the tech cards that we have in the list, Maximum Belt, Munkidori, Picnic Basket, Turo. Similarly, against Grimmsnarl, we're going to use the Munkidori, Turo, and Picnic Basket very carefully and time them correctly to make sure that we're playing around multi-prize knockouts with Phantom Dive. And trying to do them in positions where if our opponent, we're looking and we're seeing, okay, if our opponent doesn't get these extra knockouts this turn, that puts a lot of pressure on them, and we should be able to flip the momentum into our favor from there. That's when we want to be using our key healing cards. Again, like with Grimmsnarl, with the help of Maximum Belt and Adrenabrain, we can even set up for one-shots on the Dragapults earlier than they might expect. And then, of course, in the late game, if they it's kind of counterintuitive for them, because if they try to play around our healing cards by taking knockouts, then we do more damage, which can lead to more knockouts from our side. So I think the matchup it's not super bad. I think that, especially if they have to use Fezandipiti at any point to keep things going, or we can like boss down their Munkidoris and take prizes there, or just like 2-shot a Dragapult and then 1-shot a Dragapult with the help of Maximum Belt and Adrenaline later, then we can definitely come out on top. You just got to be, both this and the Grimmsnarl matchup, you got to be careful about when you bench your Pokemon. Like, you don't want to bench a Charmander super early on that you might not need, and then it ends up just being an extra prize card for your opponent later. So you got to be really, really careful how you manage your board, which Charmeleon you're evolving into, how, like, getting your Munkidori down quickly so you can get the maximum use out of it, making sure that you can get it back if your opponent counter-pressure targets it down, setting up Pidgeot consistently, maybe keeping your Pidgeot alive if your opponent's trying to put pressure on it to set it up for a knockout. There's a lot of things that you have to be careful, and you have to manage your board very carefully. Next, we have Joltik Box. So this matchup's kind of just like, most of the time they're going to get the first 2 prize cards, right? Like, it's possible for you to get like the first 2 prize cards if your opponent's having a slower start using Maximum Belt. However, or if they like open Mew or Latias, that can open up a big window for you. However, most of the time they are going to go turn 2, Jolting Charge, turn 3, attack the MP very much before you can take a 2-prize knockout. So usually they're going to be the initiator, they're going to have the 2-prize lead, and then they have tools for not one-shotting Charizard, right? Like, they have both Galvantula and Iron Leaves usually. So that's 2 ways for them to one-shot your Charizard, and it might not always be easy for them to actually set up those knockouts. Like, if they go Jolting Charge into MP very much, but they don't find maybe another energy for turn, then it might, if they don't keep their attachments going, it might be difficult for them to actually set up an Iron Leaves attack after you knock out an Iron Hands and Iono them. However, it's still like, most of the time there's going to be outs to them getting those knockouts, and you just kind of have to hope that eventually they miss something off of your slew of Ionos. So you're just taking return knockouts, usually going after like Fezandipiti. I would say that, like, if they have like Fez and Mew, or if let's say they have Mew-ex, no Fezandipiti yet, and they attack with MP very much, I'd say that like counter-pressuring the Mew there in combination with Iono is a lot of the time going to be the better option. Just because if they have the additional draw, then they will probably be able to find what they need anyways, whereas that is probably, keeping their draw power off the board is going to be what allows your Ionos to eventually stick. If they just have an Iron Hands, they don't find the boss, then they're going to have to swing into your Charizard anyways. What you should also be trying to do is not benching extra low HP Pokemon that could be hit by MP very much, right? So your opponent's usually going to go in with MP very much first, and knock out a Pokemon, a single prizer, right? They're going to go down to 4. And then if you can set up just a board of Pidgeot and Charizard from there, then there's no longer a target for MP very much. Now, they can still go for like an arm press on your Pidgeot, which can also be scary. So you're not like fully out of the woods or anything, but at least if you eventually don't have anything that can be one-shot by Iron Hands on the board, maybe going into your like last Iono for 2 prize cards, then they have to hit Iron Leaves or Galvantula for the knockout. So just trying not to bench anything extra in general. Unfavorable matchups, we have Dragapult Dusknoir to start. So this matchup is significantly more difficult than Straight Pult because of Curse Blast. That means that they have options for one-shotting your Pidgeot, they have options for one-shotting your Charizard, they can take more consistent knockouts in your Munkidori without even having to counter pressure it up by using Curse Blast on it with either Dusclops or Dusknoir. And there's not a lot that we can do, unlike other Dragapult builds, which can punish the opponent for bunching Duskulls. We cannot do that. We cannot really put pressure on their Dusclops line at all, which gives them free reign to sort of set them up. We only have 1 Adrenabrain. That's not going to be enough to pick off Duskulls, which gives our opponent a lot of time to sort of set up these big multi-prize late game plays. Now, it's not all bad. I mean, every time they use Dusknoir to like knock out Munkidori, they're taking prize cards there, which allows us to do more damage with Burning Darkness. So we, in the mid to late game, might be able to push for one-shots on Dragapult, but it's definitely easier for them to try to play around that. I'd say that like using all the same tactics, using Dragapult or Grimmsnarl to try to combat the damage that's spreading around your board is still your best way to win. And then maybe if they're taking some prize cards with Dusknoir to get rid of your Munkidori, if you can just reestablish it and then like play an Iono, that can get you back into the game. But definitely a much harder matchup than straight Dragapult. Similarly, Dragapult Charizard is our other negative matchup. Now, these are only two unfavorable matchups in my opinion, at least as far as these more popular matchups go. I mean, these are the only decks that I'm covering, so there might be some more fringe decks that you also don't have a great time against. But as far as like the main stuff, these two Dragapult builds are really your worst matchups. And Dragapult Charizard is just an unfavorable matchup because I think it's just better to have, in the Charizard mirror, it's better to have a Dragapult than a Pidgeot. They're not going to need that much. Their recon directives will usually find them the bare minimum of what they need. And then Phantom Dive is just super good against Charizard. They'll be able to play around Burning Darkness damage a lot better. They'll be able to set up for earlier Burning Darkness knockouts by putting just like a few damage counters on Charmanders, Charmeleons, and your Charizards. Whereas you can't do that, right? Like you have to wait longer for you to take Burning Darkness knockouts. Now at least you have Maximum Belt, but they have Unfair Stamp, which can be equally disruptive. And they can use their Charizard to knock out your Pidgeot in the mid game. But yeah, just the ability for them to set up to knock your Pokemon out earlier, thanks to that extra Phantom Dive damage, is really big. And of course, they're taking other knockouts in addition to that, especially if they're going after your Munkidori. And like this is a matchup where, of course, you can use Munkidori to try to keep your Pokemon healthier, but they can just use their Munkidori to move right back. So I think that the matchup is just strictly unfavorable. They have way more options than you do. And you have to hope that like maybe your Ionos disrupt them a little bit out of the game, whereas your Pidgeot gives you that extra guaranteed consistency that they don't necessarily have. That's all we've got for you today, though. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked, leave a like and maybe subscribe. If you want to check out any of my other content or my socials, the link tree will be in the description below. Have a great day.